Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day to all. In this video, I'm going over the topic of formulating research problem. Let's have a quick outline of the presentation of this video. In this video, I'm going over several subtopics which are research background, problem formulation, and research objectives and research question. What is research background? Research background is a brief outline or review of the most important study. In this case, you are looking at what have been conducted so far by other previous researchers, and you are looking at their findings. And for your research background, you have to present in a chronological order. In your research background, you also need to include a brief discussion of major theories or models related to the research problems that you are exploring, especially if you are doing quantitative research, because this will help you to construct your theoretical and conceptual framework later on. It sets forth the history and background information on your research problem or issue. In another way, your research background should be able to give your readers idea about what is the area being researched in your thesis and what is the current information surrounding the issue and what are the previous studies on the issues and relevant history on the issue. So when you are writing your research background, what are the things that should be included? Some of the things that you need to include is summary of major findings. In this case, you have to make sure that you have conducted extensive literature review in which that you are able to summarize the major findings in the field of interest that relevant to your issue that you are going to explore in your research, in your current research. And this will be explained in detail in the subsequent chapters, for example, chapter 2 or chapter 3. But in your research background, which will normally be presented in chapter 1, you look at what are the unresolved issues, what are the conflicting findings, for example, or social concern, and other issues that are still relevant that is basically have been highlighted on previous studies that you can find from the literature. So when it comes to your research background, it is looking at what are the gaps in the knowledge that you can find in the current body from empirical research or literature. And it is suggested that you can write your research background within 2 or 4 pages. Before you decide on conducting research, you have to explore what are the issues or problems that exist in the world is specific to your field of study, in which you need to be able to translate the issue into researchable problems, because there are cases whereby not all issues or problems can be translated into researchable problems because there are so many factors influencing it. For example, you might have difficulty to collect empirical data because there are lots of extraneous variables that can provide explanation about why certain kind of phenomenon happen. So in this case, it would be difficult for you to translate an issue into researchable problems that you can explore in your study. Therefore, when it comes to problem formulation, it involves about having knowledge of your subject area, meaning it relies on extensive literature review. Therefore, you know that what is going on out there, and then you are able to identify the gap. And not only that, you need to also have a research knowledge and skill, and this relates to research methodology, because when you are exploring certain kind of issue, there are certain possibilities that this particular issue can be explored using different kind of research design and methodologies. So when it comes to exploring an issue, you need to look at in what way that a particular issue can be best translated into researchable problems and can be explored later on using certain kind of methodology. And good research problems in this case, it can withstand scrutiny of procedures required to be taken, as well as it can provide a direction or destination that a researcher wants to reach. So once you have identified the researchable issue that you want to study, okay, you need to write a statement of problem. In this case, you explain the problem that you want to address in your research, and then it gives you some sort of like a points of the current situation or the gaps that you want to explore, and why is it matter for you to explore the issue which relates to your interest. So a statement of problem relates to the questions of what is or are the research gaps that will be addressed in the research, and why does this research need to be conducted. It relates to your interest, why you want to explore certain issue in your research. One of the tips that I can give you when writing up your statement of problem, you need to have these three elements in your statement of problem: vision, interest or intention, and solution. Vision refers to what are the previous study have done when it comes to exploring the issue, and interest relates to the gaps of previous study that you will address in the current study. And solution doesn't mean that you are looking at solving problems or an issue. It relates to what are the aims of the current study. So I would like to suggest that when it comes to writing up the statement of problem, it could go from 1 pages to 2 pages for proposal, for thesis, the real thesis, 4 to 5 pages. It depends on how many issues that you will explore in your current study. Let's have a look at an example of statement of problem that I abridged from my former students, my former PhD student thesis that I co-supervise with my colleague. Okay, let's have a look at her statement of problem. Okay, in this case, even though she wrote her statement of problems more than 2 pages, in this case I abridged it, I dissect the statement of problem and I highlight certain parts in which it relates to the 3 elements that I want to show. First, vision, interest, and solution. Okay, the vision is based on the previous literature review, and the interest relates to you highlight the gaps based on the literature, and solution in this case you are looking at what are the things that you want to explore in your study. It's not about solving a problem or solving something, it is about the aims of your research. Now let's have a look at forming or formulating your research objective and research question. So let's have a look at what are research objectives and what are research questions. Research objectives basically about statement relating to the focus of your study, the issue that you want to explore in your study. And you would highlight the aspects that you want to explore in terms of what, who, and how. And the research question in this case is question statement about your inquiry, and it has to be aligned with your research objectives. Okay, now we know that research objectives are basically statements relating to the focus of your study. So when you are constructing the sentence for your research objective, I would like to share certain tips with you. First, you need to identify the construct or variables that you want to study, the key points here, and then you have to make sure that you are able to state the focus of your study, meaning which relates to the variable or constructs again, and you write the objective based on the construct and focus of your study in this case. So I'll show you some example later on. Before I show the examples of research objective and research questions, let's have a quick look at what are research questions. It is basically question statement, and in this case, some tips that I would like to give is you look at the research objective and you reverse the statement of research objective into question format. So as simple as that actually. It's kind of straightforward. Now, I would like to show you some examples of research objective and research questions of a survey research. Survey research is a type of quantitative research design. Let's say that you are exploring parents' perception on online learning using paid learning management system. We know that there are lots of available learning management system or platform, but sometimes you have to pay. You have to subscribe in order for you to be able to use this learning management system. But we are looking at how do parents perceive of the use of this platform for their children's online learning. So the research objectives that we can create a post for this particular research is 1. To study parents' perception on online learning using paid learning management system and to compare different perception by parents on online learning using paid learning management system based on their education level. Because in here we are looking at is there any different perception held by parents due to their educational level. So the research question have to be aligned with the research objective. Research objective 1 is aligned with research question number 1. What are parents' perception on online learning using paid learning management system? And research objective 2 is aligned with research question number 2 as well. So it has to be some sort of like match with one another. The research objective have to be aligned with the research question. Okay, let's have a look at another example of research objective and research question. In this case, it is based on experimental research design. Okay, let's have a look at the objective. Let's say a researcher wants to investigate the effects of brain booster diet on academic performance. So the research objective here is to investigate effects of brain booster diet on academic performance. And you can see that the objective is aligned to the research question. The research question here, what are the effects of brain booster diet on academic performance? For experimental design, you know that there will be a manipulation as well as randomization. Manipulation in terms of there will be a control as well as experimental group, in which in the control group the students won't be exposed to brain booster diet, meaning they might take the normal diet, whereby in group B, the experimental group, they will be exposed to brain booster diet over a certain period of time, and later on they will be evaluated based on their academic performance to show whether there are certain kind of differences which can be related to the brain booster diet or no brain booster diet. The element of randomization in this case, let's say we have 50 students with similar range of academic performance, they are later on will be divided into two groups randomly, meaning the selection of participant in this case, whether they will be assigned to group A or group B, are based on random assignment. I would like to give another example of research objective and question based on a qualitative research study. Okay, in this case, narrative study. Let's have a look at this particular instance. Let's say there is a researcher who wants to explore the experiences of an autistic student who has moved from a self-contained program to an inclusion setting. So, he or she can propose a research question in which, first, to study the two different educational settings that an autistic student underwent and undergoing. And the second objective is to investigate the lived experience of an autistic student experiencing transition from two different educational settings. In this case, the self-contained program and inclusion program. And if we look at the question, it's aligned to the research objective. Okay? Number one, to study the two different educational settings as the objective, and the research question are looking at what are the two different educational settings that an autistic student underwent and going. The second research objective, looking at the lived experience of an autistic student. So the research question is, how do an autistic student experience two different educational settings? Now, I would like to give another example of research objective and question relates to case study. Okay, let's say a researcher wants to study a geriatric postgraduate students in higher education institution, meaning they belong to a group of individuals who are in their 60s, 70s or 80s, but they further their study at colleges or in universities. So it is very unique kind of group of individuals. So we can label them as geriatric postgraduate students. So what kind of research objective that we can pose if we want to study this particular group of individuals? One of it is to explore geriatric postgraduate students' learning experiences in higher education institution, or to investigate the perceptions of geriatric postgraduate students on their postgraduate programs, for example, if they are undergoing their postgraduate programs, to investigate the support that geriatric postgraduates receive while undergoing postgraduate study. Okay, in this case, we can look at the research objective is aligned again with the research question. And the first one relates to the research question number one. How do geriatric postgraduate students experience postgraduate learning in higher education institution? The second one, how do geriatric postgraduate students perceive postgraduate study? One, you are looking at their experience, and the second one is we want to look at their perception on postgraduate study, mean the program that they are undergoing. And the third one relate to the support that been given to them while undergoing postgraduate study. But in this case, we're looking at their perception of the supports that they receive. But at the same time, we can have a look at the information about the supports given to postgraduate students in general, not specific to geriatric students, from the university website, for example. But then we want to look at how do geriatric postgraduate students perceive the supports that given to them in this case. Next, what is research hypothesis? If you are using quantitative research in your study, sometimes you need to have a research hypothesis in which it relates to a testable assumption. Based on your research, either you are using experiment or not, that may be disputed by scientific facts. And scientific facts here relates to the fact that you get from conducting experiments or a study. For hypotheses, there are two types of hypotheses. One, it is called as null hypothesis. The symbol used is H, and there is some sort of like zero there. Okay. And for null hypothesis, it is used as a proposition or assumption when there is no difference between certain characteristics of a population. In this case, the characteristic could be variables that you are exploring. It provides some sort of like approximate description of the phenomena by stating that there is no difference of variable. Okay. When to use? It is appropriate to use when researchers are unsure about the direction of the phenomenon under study. Based on the literature review, so you might find a lot of discrepancies or previous research findings, and there is no some sort of a clear direction of a phenomenon under study, and therefore you use null hypothesis in this case. The second type of hypothesis is known as alternative hypothesis. In this kind of hypothesis, the symbol used is HA or H1. For alternative hypothesis, it proposes that there is a difference between certain characteristics of a population or the variables that you are exploring. It provides certain kind of a description of a phenomenon by stating that there is difference of variable. So when to use? It is appropriate to use alternative hypothesis when researchers or when you know the direction of the phenomenon under study, and to know the direction of phenomenon of under study, it is rely on your literature review. Let's have a look at the example of null and alternative hypothesis. In this case, I'm using brain booster diet as an example. Let's say there is no clear indication of the direction of the study. In this case, brain booster diet on academic performance. We can write our hypothesis as null hypothesis. We write HO to indicate null hypothesis, and the statement could be there is no significant difference between brain boosted diet and normal diet on academic performance. Or if we know that there is a clear direction on the effects of brain boosted diet on academic performance based on previous research, we can use alternative hypothesis. In this case, we write HA or H1. There is a significant difference between brain boosted diet and normal diet on academic performance. Before I end this video, I will leave you guys with a question to think about. Why does qualitative research do not need to have hypotheses? Here are some of the references that I use for this particular video. I also include the title of the thesis of the PhD student which I co-supervise with my colleague. The slides of this video were prepared by my colleague Dr. Rohaya, Talib, and me from School of Education, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, UTM. And this video was narrated by me, Hadijah Jaffri.